Hello, Facebook family. I haven't recorded a video in a very long time. I know that for a fact because I looked the other day and the video was probably from like November of 2020 and it's currently 2023. As you can see, I'm holding a little baby. This is my baby that was born about a week and a day ago. She was born on March 18th at 10:14 a.m. And today I want to share my birth story with you all. So my birth story kind of started out with something called prodromal labor. I think that's what it is, or it was like really painful Hicks contractions that started about March 1st, which I think I was about 38 weeks. February 28th was my last day working. I meant to work to 3/17, which was her due date, but I didn't get to do that because I was in a lot of pain. And unfortunately, the pain and the contractions weren't progressing anything. Like my cervix wasn't dilated, I wasn't effaced or anything, just like in a lot of pain. I also had something called like the lightning pain, and like just all of a sudden, just a shock of lightning, like down in that area, comes on all of a sudden. But my labor, I can probably say my labor officially started at 5:20 a.m. March 17th, which was her due date. I had contractions that were pretty consistent, maybe like under 10 minutes for about a while. I called the doctor to ask what to do because I didn't want to go to the hospital again because I had been to the hospital so many times, probably about 3 or 4 times, thinking I was in labor when I actually wasn't. And so the doctor called and said, you probably need to come in so we can check you. And I said, well, at this point, I don't even want to get in the car because I don't want to have to sit still for too long. She said, okay, well, that means you definitely need to come in. So I went in and they monitored my contractions. They said, you're having contractions. So the doctor asked, do you want to go into the hospital now or do you want to go home to walk? See if you can progress your labor a little bit more. And I said, I think I want to go home and walk. I want to go home. I want to go ahead and probably eat too because I don't know how the rest of the day is going to go. So I think I walked Friday probably about 3 different times in 30-minute intervals. I also did like the sidewalk stepping because at that point that morning I was only like 1 centimeter dilated. So I was like, oh, I got to get this going because I think I'm in like early labor. Um, they say early labor, especially for first-time mothers, can last probably like up to 3 days. It can last up to a week. It just depends. Um, and so we were walking and stuff, me and my mom, and then I kind of bounced on the ball a little bit in between contractions. Contractions had kind of slowed down by, I think, 6 o'clock that evening. And I was like, well, I tried. I'm tired. I'm not going to push my body too much. About 11 a.m. p.m. that evening, the contractions started getting stronger. So I tried to take some Benadryl to kind of relax and try to get some sleep. Probably about 1 a.m. I woke my husband up. I was like, okay, we got to go. And I was like, if this isn't labor, then that was Saturday morning, 1 a.m. So if this isn't labor, then that whatever labor comes is going to be extremely painful. Um, I'm looking at my notes here. Okay, so we decided to go to the hospital because the contractions were becoming unbearable. By the time we got into the emergency room door, I was like, didn't even want to sit still in the waiting room because it like was so painful. They got me a wheelchair and wheeled me up, and I couldn't even fill out the paperwork that time. So I knew something was different because each time I went to the hospital, I was filling out the paperwork myself. I was pretty calm. I was walking. I couldn't really sit still in the wheelchair when we were going up. So once I did get to the hospital, they checked me. I was 2 centimeters dilated. So I went from 1 to 2, from 1 centimeter at 10 a.m. Friday, and then I went to then I was 2 centimeters Saturday morning at like probably, I guess you can say about 2 o'clock by the time we finally got there. And so I was like, okay, well that's progress, but that's still not qualification to stay at the hospital. Qualification to stay at the hospital is there's a complication, which I didn't want that, or you 6 centimeters dilated, which means you're in active labor, or of course your water is broken, or you're bleeding so much that you're going through a pad. So none of that had happened. So they did monitor her heart rate for a little while, and everything was doing well. And then I walked a little bit, about 3 laps around the labor and delivery center. And then it got too painful. I didn't really want to walk anymore, so I was on the peanut ball, which is kind of like a birth ball, but it's kind of like squished in the middle. And so I was on that, and then they said, let's go ahead and hook you back up. And they hooked me back up, and they noticed that her heartbeat dropped a couple of times. So the nurse talked to the midwife on the phone and she said, okay, well, let's go ahead and admit her because we are not comfortable sending you home with your baby's heart rate dropping a couple of times with your contractions. So I was finally admitted, a little bit concerned about her heart rate. So they decided to give me Pitocin to speed up labor. And I was like, okay, but before you give me Pitocin, are you going to give me a pain medication? They said, yes, we'll do that. And so they gave me pain medication called Stadol. Um, what that did for me personally, it felt like I was seeing like all kinds of shapes and colors. It almost felt like I can taste the shapes and the colors. I don't know if that's just me or everyone has that same experience. I think I slept a little bit. I was saying some things that are kind of like out of character for me. I think I took my bonnet off and like put it on the floor and was like, "This is trash." And I don't even know why I said that. And then my mom had got up to go to the bathroom, and I said, "Where's that one right there?" Instead of just asking where my mom is. And so I did that for, I think it took the pain away pretty much all the way for about 45 minutes. But then after that, I felt a contraction. So I feel a contraction now. And they said, well, we can't give you any more of that until like 3 more hours. And even if we did, it probably wouldn't do too much. So do you want a heat pack? And I said, okay. And so I had a heat pack. And I was able to stay calm for maybe about a good another 45 minutes. But after that, I was like, okay, this is getting too painful. And they were like, well, we are increasing your Pitocin. I said, so you can increase my Pitocin every 5 minutes, but you can't give me more pain medication. I was getting a little feisty. Um, so let's see. Let me go over my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. Yeah. So about 4 a.m. is when I was transferred to the labor and delivery room, and that's when they gave me this Stadol and all that. All right, so Saturday morning, March 18th, around 6 a.m., I did ask what they can do for the pain. I can only have to stay out every 3 hours. Um, yeah, so I just said that. All right, so around 7:30 a.m. that morning, shift change came in and I told him, I said I couldn't stand the pain anymore. And so I agreed to go ahead and get the epidural so I can try to get some rest. I was planning on getting epidural. I just didn't know when I should get it. So I knew for sure I didn't want to push without the epidural. People say there's something called the ring of fire. I didn't want to know what that was like. I didn't even know. I don't want to know if I could handle it or not. I didn't want to find out. So I was like, I want to have an epidural when it's time to push. Um, Around 7:45 a.m. that morning, I felt like a trickle, and I wondered if my water had broken, and they checked me, and it hadn't. So about 15 minutes later, I felt a big like gush of liquid, and I was just like, my water broke. Like I didn't even have to ask. I just told Mom my water broke, and then asked she asked them to check me, and they even really have to check. Someone was checking, like, you don't have to check, but yeah, that's what that is. It was like so much, and it's still coming out like every time I had a contraction. And so, like, I definitely know what it's like for your water to break now. And I'm glad they didn't have to break it themselves because I think the pain would have been a little worse. Um, and I felt relief for about 2 minutes. I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Because, like, all that like pressure from the amniotic fluid and things were in there. But Liliana didn't like the fact that she didn't have any more water to swim in. So, they were like, can we go ahead and check you? And I said, yeah. They're like, you're 6 centimeters. And I was like, okay. I just want the epidural. I don't care how much I progress. Just come on, let's get the epidural. And so my contractions are coming about every 3 minutes. I told Ben he can go home and rest. Ben's my husband, and because I thought things were gonna go by kind of slow because my early labor did. And so I told my mom, I said, go ahead and call Ben, tell him my water's broken. I'm 6 centimeters. And so probably about 8 to 9 a.m. Things were a little fuzzy. Um, I did know that we were waiting on the anesthesiologist to come in and put in an epidural, and I know at some point she was confused on whether they needed her somewhere else in the hospital for a more urgent matter. Thank goodness they didn't need her for that, because my situation wasn't an emergency. I was just in a lot of pain. I think someone like may needed surgery, but they found someone else to do it. Um, And then as soon as she finally came in and started setting things up, that's when Ben came in. I was like, oh, thank goodness. So I held on to his shirt so tight, um, like while I was practicing sitting still for contractions. Because when I had contractions, I like to throw my head all the way back and like kind of arch my back a little bit. I don't know how that like, made me feel better, I guess. Oh, her little bow's too big on her head. There we go. um, because you don't want to move when there's a needle in your spine, obviously. You don't want to be paralyzed. They did see that I have a slight curvature in my back. I knew I had one from high school. I didn't know like if it was so like obvious that the anesthesiologist could see. So I think my curvature is probably like 10 to 15% or 15 to 20%, but they did see that. So around 9:15 a.m., I finally got the epidural in. And I was like, okay, I can rest now. And I felt like the pain moved from like my stomach area and my lower back area to more of my pelvic area. And so it's just like a lot of all the pressure from that, it was just like down that area. Um, and then around at 9:20 a.m., I felt like I had to go to the bathroom. And they said that's kind of like what it feels like when you need a push. And so they checked and they're like, oh, there's her head. We don't even have to check you. Like you're not even, I mean, you're obviously 10 centimeters. It's like cervix is gone now. Or it's not cervix, it's gone. Your cervix can't be gone. Cervix is fully open. They were like, you ready to push? And I was like, no. And the midwife was like, well, that's the only way she's gonna get here. And so I started pushing around 9:30 a.m. My husband Ben was on one side, my mom was on the other. They were holding up my feet. I pushed for about 45 minutes, and Liliana was born at 10:14 a.m. Saturday morning on March 18th. And the rest of my life has changed forever, changed for the better. She's definitely taught us some things already. That she rules. She says when we sleep. She says when we eat. She says when we go places. And I think she's just like the best thing ever that's happened to us. And so we're embarking on this journey of having a little one. Um, at first, like when I was in labor, I said I didn't want to have any more kids. But now looking at her, I was like, that's just like the miracle of life. And I couldn't imagine, excuse me, couldn't imagine not having another little one, giving her a sibling. Definitely not anytime in the future, because I don't want to make another lifetime commitment right now. I want to kind of get used to her first, get used to parenting. So maybe like in another couple of years, or maybe 2, 3 years, God will bless us with another little one. Her first name she's named after a great grandmother who passed away about 3 years ago. It's my husband's grandmother. And then her middle name is the same middle name as my aunt's middle name who passed away. And if you looked at my videos, or if you want to go back and look at them, I talked about my Aunt Deidre and how much she was a big influence in my life. So that's her name. I always said, I was like, I want my grandmother to meet my child. I want my dog Brody to meet my baby. He's 11 now. And I never knew I had to say I want my Deidre to meet my baby, because I thought that would just be automatic, because she's my mom's youngest sister. She's the youngest of 8. So I thought for sure she was going to meet her, but unfortunately she didn't get to. But I know one day we'll all be reunited in heaven if we're faithful. And I know my Deidre was faithful, so I couldn't see her not being in heaven. But I appreciate you all listening to my birth story if you made it this far. And I will try to post more soon. Bye.